guys, Caitlin here. Today we're going to be doing some tutor prep for Classical Conversations Cycle 2. In case you're new to my channel, my name is Caitlin. I am a Classical Conversations mom. We're going into our 7th year of doing CC, and every year I make prep videos to help other CC families get organized and ready for the upcoming year. I do them for foundations, I do them for essentials, and last year when I started tutoring, I started doing them for tutoring as well. So a lot of tutoring prep stuff does not change from year to year, but I am going to go ahead and do a new one this year because there's a couple new things, a couple things I tried last year that didn't work, a few things that changed because of the cycle. So if you've seen my video from last year, this may be really similar, but if you haven't, if this is your first year tutoring, hopefully this will be really helpful for you. I also film a weekly video, or I did last year and I intend to do this year. When we get back from CC, I sit down and I film like a 10-minute video just giving an overview of what I did for that week. So be looking for those as the school year starts in case you need help planning your lessons. One other housekeeping thing is that I link on my blog everything that I have a link for. A few of these things I don't have links for. I've gotten them from other CC families, or they were posted places that aren't linkable, that kind of thing. But everything I have a link for, it is posted on my blog. I have two posts really. One is a tutor prep post that's really generic and it has just stuff to do in the summer to get ready for tutoring. And the other is my cycle specific lesson plan post. And that one I update every single week and I tell you what I'm doing for math every week, what I'm doing for Latin every week. And it's got all the stuff that I do throughout the year. So, but make sure you check out both of those resources because that's where I'll put all the information. All right, let's get started. So last year, my class was a group of obesitarians and apprentice kiddos. So my kids were 5 to 7 years old. This year, they are, I guess, all apprentice age. They're going to be 6 to 8 years old. So a little bit older. They're not the itty bittiest, but some of them are still non-readers. And so hopefully some of the stuff that I share will be helpful, whether you're have the same age as me or a little bit younger or a little bit older. I do have 4 of my kids that I'll have this year I had last year, and then I'll have 3 new ones. So some things I'm changing up this year, not because they didn't work for me, but just because the kids are exactly the same. So I want to do a little bit of different stuff. Okay. I do try to follow CC best practices and be stick in the stand, but also I kind of refer to myself as like stick in the glitter because I do love colorful and extra things. So I try not to go too far with that. I know that's not CC's like overarching vision for what community day looks like. So I do try to keep it simple-ish with a little extra Caitlin flair, I guess. So anyway, hopefully this will all be helpful for you. So let's start out with classroom organization, I guess, kind of things that I use on my tutor board and every single week to run the classroom management, classroom organization type stuff. Okay, so the first thing is my tutor board. Over the summer, sit down and I go ahead and write out all the memory work for all weeks. And so I handwrite it because that is CC policy, that it is handwritten, not printed off. Otherwise I would totally print it off, but it needs to be handwritten. But you can write it ahead of time if you are at a facility where that works for you. If you have like a whiteboard, a portable whiteboard that you're taking with you each week and you're having to handwrite it at home, this is not going to work for you. But if you're like where we are, all the tutors do this and put them in these shop ticket things and then hang them up on our board with clips. So I went ahead and I sat down and I wrote out all the memory work. This is week 1 that I've already put in my little shop tickets for all 24 weeks, and I have those filed away. It took me a long time. It was exhausting. My arm was tired, but I love it so much having that done so that during the year I do not have to every single week be like, oh, I have to write out the memory work real quick. I just like to have it done. And then I just switch these out each week and we're good to go. So that's one thing for my tutor board. Another thing is I made a schedule, a movable schedule. I used Velcro so that I can change it. So I have the times and then I have the different things that we're doing, but it mostly stays the same, but sometimes science and fine arts will have to get switched around based on if we're doing something that all of the classes have to access in a separate room, and so we have to have like time slots, that can change it. Or if we're doing a whole group activity for fine arts, like at the end of tin whistle or end of orchestra. So I use this and I change it each week so that the kids, really the parents, the kids don't, I feel like, look at this all that much, but for my age kiddos at least. But the parents, that way they kind of know what we're doing, where we're going to be, when is it presentation time, if they're in multiple classrooms and they're trying to come see their kids' presentation or whatever. So I have that. And then I also made a presentation order list. Same thing, it's Velcro, and it has the names of my students, not in this one, obviously, for privacy reasons. This is my demo one, but it has the names of my students, and so I put them on there, and then that's the order we go in for presentation. And then at the end of the week, I move them down, and whoever was at the bottom goes to the top, and we just do this looping rotation throughout the year. I really like that, one, because then it's not like I've been in classes where the tutors just ask for volunteers, and I always feel like that's kind of chaotic. I don't like it. And it also means that your really loud, outgoing ones will usually go first, and your shyer ones who kind of want to hang back, they end up usually going last. And I like that this gives everybody a chance to be first. It gives everybody a chance to have to be patient and be last. It eliminates all questions of who goes when. So this has been great. These are things that I created. They are in my Etsy shop. I have a whole bundle of tutor resources if you want these for yourself. You can check that out. Also, to go with that, in that bundle, I have a God with arrows that goes in the center of my board. It's just got magnets on it. And then I have these labels that go on my board. So when I set up my board, when I get there in the morning, I put this in the middle. I put these all around it with these above as the label. And then I have these hanging kind of in the corner side so that everybody can see that. So I'll post a picture of my board so you can see what it looks like. But that's kind of how I set up my tutor board. So that's kind of my classroom organization thing. I don't have a whole lot of other displays or things that I use every week. I don't usually do, like, I know that there's some people post rules or like their class guidelines. I've not done that. I keep it pretty simple with that. The only other thing that I use weekly is I have a scientific method poster, and I put this up when it's time for hands-on science. So this does not go up at the beginning of the day. Just as we do our new grammar, I take down all of this stuff that I showed you other than the schedule and the presentation paper. And then I put this up in the middle when we do fine arts. No, hands-on science. One last classroom management type thing. I printed these out last year. They were like a free thing from Teachers Pay Teachers maybe. And they're really cute, but I think I only used them maybe once the very first week. But it was these little paired up cards, and you hand them out randomly, and then the kids like turn them over, and if you got cookie, then you pair up with the person who had milk. And it's a way to pair up the kids in your class so that it's fair and it's random. I don't think I ever ended up using them other than, like I said, I think maybe that first week. So they're cute, and I'll have a link to them if you want them, but that's not something that I ended up really using in my class. Okay, so let's move out of classroom management and into new grammar. So like I showed already, I go ahead and have the new grammar pages written up on a piece of paper. I put them in those shop ticket holders, and that's how I display them on my board. Like I said earlier, I have a post from last year that shows everything that I did for new grammar last year, week by week. And I have a post for this year where I've started filling in what I intend to do. Some things like math does not change, and timeline, so I can just reuse what I did last year. Some things like Latin, it's very similar week to week, and so I already kind of have a plan for that. So I've been filling those in, and then some of the other things like science, I change that more week to week. I will fill that in as I go along and as I plan. But check that out if you want ideas. So I'm not going to go through like step-by-step ideas, but I'll share a few things that I like to have on hand that I use a lot, so that if you need to go out and buy materials, you know, see stuff at Target in the dollar spot or whatever, you can maybe grab these. So for geography, I kind of do a rotation. I have like 6 things that I like to do, and I'll do them for weeks 1 through 6 and then repeat them for weeks 7 through 12 and so on. I like to have little plastic animals, and I ended up getting a pack of sea creatures. That was not on purpose, but I try to line it up so that if we're doing something that is bodies of water, rivers, that kind of thing, we'll use these. But any little animals will do, and they can take their animal from location to location. I also have these little popsicle sticks. They're miniature. That was just in my craft stuff I've had for years, and so sometimes we'll use those, and they point with their little popsicle sticks. I found these little googly eyeball rings, maybe at Target in the party section, and they can put it on their finger, and then they can use the eyeballs of their googly eyes to look at the different locations I have a big pointer. Sometimes they'll come up to I have a really big map in my classroom, and then they have their little trivium table maps. Sometimes we'll use my big one and they'll come up and they'll point to it. So those are some things that I like to have for geography. Sometimes if it's like seasonal, I might do something seasonal, like around Halloween. I have some little plastic witch fingers. I've done like candy hearts, M&Ms, like little candies for locations. I really don't do a whole lot of candy in my classroom just because of food allergies and sensitivities and sugar and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes, occasionally, I will do that. So that's typically what I like to do for geography. Last year, I made a set of shakers. These are these little containers from Dollar Tree. They come like 10 in a pack, so they're really, really cheap. And I just put some white rice and put the lid on, and if we have a song or a chant or something that lends itself to shakers, we will use those. For history, almost every week we use these visual cards. So for history, of course, I use the CC song, and I use hand motions that I find typically from someone named Driven by Grace here on YouTube. And again, I link her stuff every single week in my weekly planning video. But I also usually use these visual cards. These are great if you have kids who are non-readers or early readers, because they don't have to be able to read this sentence. Each card has a little picture. And so we go through the sentence, we sing and do the hand motions, and then we'll look at these, talk about what they are, and then I hand them out to the class. Usually each week has about 8 cards in it. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. And so we have to kind of rotate and take turns. But then the kids, as we sing the song, will come up to the board, and I have magnets on the back, and they'll stick these up in order. And my kids last year loved these. And so, at first, at the beginning of the year, I was still kind of trying to get my footing and figure out what I liked and what they liked. And so I did a bunch of different things. But by the end of the year, it was pretty consistent. We would do the CC song, the hand motions, and then we would do the history visual cards a couple of times, and they loved them, and they would be like, can we do it again? Can we do it again? So they really enjoyed that. So those are from CC Connected. I have them linked. You can print them off and laminate them and make those for history. For timeline, again, I have, like I do with geography, I have a 6-week rotation. So I have 6 things I like to do with timeline. I do them for 6 weeks, and then 6 weeks, and then I rotate. And you can see those more specifically on my blog, but I like to do where I hide the cards around the classroom, and then I play the song where they run around and get them, and then we put them in order. Some weeks we will lay them out, and I'll flip one over and they have to guess which one it is. Some weeks we play Timeline Bomb, which I have these little bombs printed off, and I stick them on the back of my card, and we sing through the song, and a kid will point to one, we flip it over, and if it's not a bomb, good. And if it is a bomb, then we keep going, and then if you get 3 bombs, they're out. There's no consequence or anything, but everybody shrieks and laughs and stuff. Sometimes we do timeline limbo. So I have a jump rope, and a mom and I will hold it, and they limbo as we do the timeline song, and then I'll lower it. And we've done like a timeline scramble up where I just scramble them out of order and they have to reorder them. So again, that's all on my blog. You can check those out. I have an agility ladder. It is, I can't really pull it out and show you here on the video, but it's just, imagine a ladder down on the ground. This is what it looks like all bundled up. You can absolutely make this with painter's tape on the floor, where you just tape out a ladder and they can hop through it. Kind of like hopscotch, but without going out in, just going straight through it. You could do that, but I knew that it's hard enough for me to get myself and my kids there in time to set up my other stuff. There was no way I'd be there early enough to put taped ladders on the floor. So I bought an agility ladder. I think it was like $12 on Amazon. Absolutely worth it. And so I just lay it out in the classroom floor, and we do different things. We'll hop through it as we say, the memory work, or sing the song, or skip count. So I use this a lot. You'll see that show up in my blog quite a bit. It's nice to have a variety of different pointers. I showed you that one for geography that we use a lot, but I have some of these. These came from Dollar Tree. I have some fly swatters that we use sometimes to whack things. So just little inexpensive things like that. The kids, they enjoy that too. For both math and Latin, I have these bundles in my Etsy shop of cards where you can create, the skip counting equations or the other equations that we learn in formulas for math. For Latin, that you can do the different endings and make it into a big chart if you want to. It's really flexible in what you do with it, and it's designed for at-home use, but also a lot of tutors like it, including myself. Especially for Latin, since you repeat that so much, I like to have a variety. And so it's nice to have those cards, and then they can take turns putting them in order on the board or hitting them with a fly swatter or pointing at them or whatever. For math, especially towards the end of the year when we do lots of different equations, I would teach it to them. We'd go through it a couple of times, and then just like with the history visual cards, I'd give them each a piece of it and they would build it themselves. My age group has loved that. They love it. If they have a little piece of something and they get to come stick it up on the board, huge hit for my age group. So like I said, I do that with Latin, with math, and with history off and on through the year. Some of them I don't, like history I do almost every time. Latin and math occasionally. So check those out. One other thing about new grammar, as far as how do I play the new grammar. So if it's an official CC song, you can play it in class. If it's not an official CC song, if it's something you learn from YouTube, you have to just sing it yourself. You're not allowed to play that in class. So for the official songs, I use my Yodo player. I don't actually take the Yodo player to class. I have made Yodo playlists that my kids use on our Yodo player at home. I just use the playlist on my phone and I play it through a Bluetooth speaker that I have. And that way I have them right there, easy to find, not having to click through an app or anything, or worried about internet working or not. And I have a really thorough tutorial on how to do that on my blog and on my YouTube channel, so you can check that out. You don't have to do a YouTube playlist, but I know that that's getting more and more popular. And you can download the songs from CC Connected and put them on there. It's like for history, there's someone who has taken the songs and chopped off the beginning where they say it out verbally and just have the song part. And so I like to do that because like the first time I want to say it verbally, but then when you have to go through it 7 times, I like to just go through the song multiple times. So I use that. I use the Yodo. So you can check that out if you're interested, or if you have Yodo and you don't know how to do it. I've got a whole separate tutorial I'm not going to get into right now. Okay, let's move to fine arts. So for fine arts, if you're like super brand new to tutoring, you may not even know how it works exactly. But we do 6 weeks of drawing, 6 weeks of tin whistle, 6 weeks of great artists. So usually like painting or maybe a little bit of sculpting type things, and then 6 weeks of orchestra. That's the standard. I know that there's a few communities that will change the order of that just based on different things for their community, but in general, that's typically how it goes. So last year, my first year tutoring in the summer, what my goal was to get the first 6 weeks ready to go. That's drawing. And so I picked which drawing projects I wanted to do with my kids. I went ahead and made my sample art of it. And then I went ahead and got like lesson plan ideas, examples, that I want, if I had art I wanted to show, that kind of thing. And then I didn't get any further than just the drawing unit during the summer. The other ones I did as we got to them, and that was fine. Thankfully this year, because tin whistle is exactly the same other than you play a different song, and orchestra is pretty similar as far as the instruments go. It just changes which 3 pieces of music you listen to. Those 2 units are going to be super easy for me to just reuse what I had from last year. And then for the artists, that's after Christmas, we sit down as a community and decide that, and our director gets all the materials for that. And so there's not a ton of prep that I have to do for that at home either. I can't really make those projects for sample ones as easily depending on what materials we use. So I'm mostly prepped already for fine arts for the whole summer. But so if you're new and you're not able to get all of your fine arts prep for the whole year, that is totally fine. It's going to be fine. But I do, if I could give you some advice, I would say try to go ahead and get your 6 drawing projects picked out and sit down one Sunday afternoon and get your samples all made, because those first 6 weeks, especially if you're new, this is all going to be new to you, and that's just one less thing you have to do. So I use mostly Art with Allie and Inside the Lines. Those are both websites. They're both CC people, CC moms, I guess, who are creating art projects that go along with the cycle and with the week of drawing that we're on. And so I usually look at both of those, pick which one I like better, go with one of those. I think each year there's been maybe 1 week that I didn't really care for either option, and so I found something different. But that's really nice to have that already done. And I will sit down and, for example, the first week we talk about oils, and so I have some sample artwork for them to look at and identify the different oils in them. And so, I've sat down and worked on that, and all of this stuff that I use is linked to my blog post where I share my tutor plan. So go check that out if you want week by week stuff already picked out for you, or so you can see what I have done. For tin whistle, like I said, you may not be ready to think about all this yet, so just kind of keep this in the back of your mind and come back in a month or 2 when you're ready. But I last year printed off all these different visual summer ones that were shared on, like in the tutor group or on CC Connected. Some of them are ones that I ended up making, but I have links to everything that I can link on my blog. And so that way I already had all my tin whistle stuff ready to go, visuals to use in class, little games and activities. That's all. You can check out my tutor plans if you want more information about that. Like I said, with the great artists, we won't decide most of that until Christmas time, after Christmas, and we meet before the third quarter. But I did go ahead and find some bios of the artist and some samples of their work, because thankfully some other great CC moms have collected compilations of that, and I have those saved and ready to go so that I can show them each week some different samples of the artist's work. So that's linked, you can check that out. And then for orchestra, same thing kind of as tin whistle. I've already got my different stuff printed off as far as, you know, what are the parts of the orchestra and the different seating charts by time period. This is all stuff that you can use from year to year. I used these Meet the Instrument cards last year to help my kids practice the different orchestra families. And so all that was done, and I get to reuse all of that this upcoming year, which is nice. So it's less prep than it was the first year. So anyway, if you're super ready to get the whole year knocked out, you can check out all that stuff on my blog and try to get those. But again, if you just get your drawing stuff done, you're gonna be good. You're gonna be in good shape. One other thing before we move to science is if you're feeling nervous about tin whistle or orchestra because maybe you don't have a lot of musical background, there is a girl, Stephanie Laughlin, I think is her name, here on YouTube, who does music videos, no, YouTube videos, and she has a musical background and she's really good at explaining it. And so I use her videos every week. I watch those to help me prep for tin whistle and for orchestra. And so I just like listen to them, jot down things that she says. She walks you through just a lot of music theory stuff that was really helpful for me. So those are linked. You can check those out. Now let's talk about hands-on science. There's not a whole lot of prep that I do for hands-on science in the summer. We meet together, the tutors and our director, and we go over this stuff together and talk about what materials we need and all that kind of stuff. As far as what I do at home, there's really only two things. One is I print off some scripts from CC Connected. There are a bunch of different options. I have several linked on my blog so you can see which one suits you. But there's two that I really like, and so I print those off and put them in my binder so that I can use them for just like leading questions, vocabulary that might need to be defined, connecting it to other things that we've done. They're just really helpful. They're not super long, but they give you just a little bit to talk about if you don't feel super confident just going off of the Van Cleve's experiment in the book or whichever experiment we're doing. So those are really good. And then there are a couple of people on YouTube who will do a video each week that demonstrates the experiment, and so you can see it in action before you try it in front of your kids. And they kind of, again, give you some talking points and things to think about. And so I usually each week, I don't do this in the summer because I will have forgotten it by the time it rolls around. But each week as I'm prepping for that particular week, I will watch, usually like last year I found 2 creators and this year I have 2 people that I'm watching. And so I'll watch those 2 videos and read through the science scripts to get me ready to go. All right, now let's talk about review games. So last year what my goal was to come up with 12 review games during the summer, have them prepped, totally ready to go, so that for the first semester, I just picked a review game each week and it was ready, and I had 12 different games. And then theoretically, the second semester, I would just repeat those same 12 games. Now, I did have a little bit of change between first and second semester because like one of my first semester ones was a kind of fall Halloween related one. So obviously I wasn't going to redo that. There were a couple that like either I forgot pieces that week, so I had to substitute or whatever, just like ones I didn't like as much. But in general, that's basically what I did. Now, you do not have to have 12 games ready. You don't have to do 12 separate games the whole year if you don't want to. I know that there are some tutors who they will do the same game for 6 weeks and then switch and have another game for 6 weeks. So they literally just do 4 separate games for the year. For me, that would be too repetitive. The kids may do totally fine with it, but for me, I don't want that. Some people will do like 6 games and they'll rotate just like I do with geography and timeline, and they'll do weeks 1 through 6 and they'll rotate them again through, the end of the semester, and then 2 more times in the spring semester. So kind of depends on what works for you. For this year, I took my 12 original games and I looked at which ones do we like from last year. Were there any I wanted to cut? I ended up keeping 9 of the games that I used last year. There were 3 that they weren't bad. They just weren't my favorites. And so for right now, I'm planning to do the 9, and then those last 3 weeks, I'll just pick 3 maybe of our favorites of the 9 for semester 1, and then do the same thing again semester 2. If I see some other really great ones that I want to try, I can pop those in during those 3 weeks that have been repeat weeks, but it's really super flexible. You can do whatever. You don't have to do a different thing each week, but I will quickly show you which of the ones that I prepped and had, and maybe some thoughts about them. I will say one thing that I learned that last year was that I don't really super love competitive games with my kids. Like, we had some problems with, having a hard time winning, having a hard time losing. And I definitely feel like that's a great skill for kids. And so I'm not cutting it out completely, but trying not to have it super often. One of the things that I'm doing this year is I'm going to modify some of the games where instead of it's like one group of kids versus a different group of kids, where it's going to be like all the kids versus Miss Caitlin. And I think that way if I lose, it's not a big deal. They'll be excited, and probably I can throw the game so that they lose. So that I always lose and they always win. But if not, it won't be as big of a deal because it's not one of their peers that's beating them. I hope that will help. Also, one of the games I'll show you in a minute had positive and negative points, and I realized my kids don't understand negative points. They did not understand that, and it was really confusing and really hard for them. So I'm going to modify that too, and I'll share about that in a second. So feel it out with your kids. If you have the master's class, they're probably going to have fun with competitiveness and be okay with losing. But if you have the little bitties, I don't know that I would recommend it, because it was kind of a struggle last year. So anyway, that being said, here are some of the ones that we do. So the first week we do Would You Rather, because there's a whole 30 minutes of review and not a lot of stuff to review because you're just reviewing 1 week of stuff. So we did Would You Rather questions. So I'll ask the CC memory work, and then I'll say, would you rather? And I give them 2 options, and they run to whichever side of the room. And they love that. You can find like some summer ones. So, because they're just coming off of summer, or for us, when we start, it's August and it's still basically summer around here. If you're doing it right after Christmas, you could do like winter type questions. There's tons of options. I've got some linked on my blog, so you can check those out. But Would You Rather is fun. The kids love it. Low prep. You don't have to bring stuff in with you. Also, just one other thing I wanted to talk about, just the review games in general. I do not ask specific kids questions. I always ask them as a whole group. Even if a specific kid is going to throw a ball or roll a dice or whatever, we answer as a group. For those younger ones who maybe are shy, maybe don't have the confidence, maybe haven't been in CC for several years yet, and don't want to, be asked, tell me about Charlemagne. They may not know it yet. So I never want to put a kid on a spot that's that little and make them feel really uncomfortable. So I just say, tell me about Charlemagne, and I start it and I sing it, and the kids sing with me, and then we do the game. So that's what works for me. That's my personality. You may feel differently, and that's fine. And if you have older ones, that may be a different story, but that's just kind of how I do the game. So don't feel like you have to be like, hey, little 4-year-old, tell me this question, and if you can't answer it, you don't get to play or whatever. It doesn't have to be stiff like that. Okay, back to the games. Rocket Blast Off. This was from Teachers Pay Teachers, and you just have, each kid has this and a dry erase marker and a dice. You ask a question, and then they each roll a dice, and if, they color in whichever number. So if they rolled a 6, they would color in a 6. Ask another question, they roll it again. If they get a 1, they color in the 1, but if they roll 6 again, they don't color anything in that time. And you just keep question, roll dice, color, question, roll dice, color. Whoever gets their rocket tail colored in the first, the quickest wins. It's a really quick game, and so even though, yes, there are winners in this game, usually you're able to play it so many times, most everybody ends up being a winner before it's all over. So that's a good one. Stinky Feet. This is the one I was talking about with the negative points that did not work so well for us. I did not create the game Stinky Feet, but I did create this little graphic. It's on my blog with the feet and then these little tiny feet, so you can download that. It's free. But the game, basically, you just stick the feet on your board and you stick these little cards that have positive and negative numbers on the board. You ask them a question, they come up and they draw a card, and if it's positive, their team gets positive points, and if it's negative, their team loses points. Like I said, for those little ones, they do not understand the negative points, and so I would not recommend doing that, because we tried it last year and it was like a disaster. They were so upset, they didn't understand. One team just kept getting negatives, and there was like no way to get them out of the hole. It was kind of rough. So instead, what I'll be doing this year is if they pull a positive point, then they will get, like, the whole class will get points. And if it's a negative point, then I will get points. And then whoever has the most, me or them, wins. And we just won't even do anything with subtracting points this year. We'll just keep adding up points to make it more simple. If you have the older ones, then absolutely do those subtracting of the points. But if you have the younger ones, I don't know that that's necessarily the best choice. Okay, bingo's a really simple one. This is a CC specific bingo, but not cycle specific. There are always some cycle specific ones that are posted, but I wanted one that I could reuse from year to year. So I just went with this one. And so I draw a card or pull a stick or whatever, toss a dice, whatever. And if it lands on Latin, then we do Latin, and they get to fill in a bingo. One time we did it, we used dry erase markers. Another time it was close to Valentine's Day, and I gave them candy hearts, and they got to put the candy hearts on there. So this one is another good one, and this is also a very quick one, and so you typically can play it multiple times and have multiple winners. So if you're worried about if only one kid wins or my kid's gonna be upset, usually you can play that one multiple times and get more than one winner. Okay, this game is called Ouch. It was posted in the tutor group last year. I've not seen it posted this year, so I may not be able to get a link for you. But these are these little Band-Aids, and they have the different strands on them. And so I'll just hold the Band-Aids and the kids draw them. And if they draw timeline, we review timeline. And if they draw ouch, everybody just yells ouch. So there's no points, there's no winning or losing. It's just a kind of a fun game where they get to shout. It's not my favorite, but they liked it pretty well, and I spent a lot of time cutting those Band-Aids out. So okay, another game is, I made this one. It's called Bug SWAT, and it's just a bunch of different little bugs. It's a printable on my blog. You can check that out. But what I do is, or what I did with them last time, is I would write with a dry erase marker on the back, like history week 4 and science week 3 or whatever, and we'd scatter them all out, and they would come up and they'd slap one with a fly swatter, and then we'd flip it over, and whatever that strand was in that week, that's what we would review. And they loved it because they loved picking the bugs, and they all wanted to pick the spiders and kill the spiders first. It is a little more prep work for me up front because these took a long time to cut out, and then you have to write on them on the back. But those are on my blog, and I also made a cutesy set. If you have the younger kids, you want to do like little cute bugs instead of more realistic bugs. Another one that's really simple is called Pom Pom Bomb. So I've got all my little pom-poms in this little zippy bag here. And a black pom-pom is -5, and a red pom-pom is +5, and any other color is +1. So you ask them a question, they reach in the little bag and they pull out a pom-pom, and then their team either gets +5, +1, or -5. And so that one is a little bit easier to do with the negative. It's not like the Stinky Feet where there's like a ton of negative options, and there's only like 1 or 2 black and the red, so it's not as likely to get either the good or the bad one. So that one's really simple. Another one is target practice. These are these little sticky balls. I got these, I think, in the party section at Target, and you can just draw a target on your whiteboard, or you can kind of like put big blobs all over your whiteboard and call it one history and one Latin and one timeline and whatever. And then they throw this at the board, and wherever it sticks, that's the question that you review. I also use this at Christmas. We do a Christmas review day in December, and I pretended they were ornaments, and I drew a Christmas tree on the whiteboard with little ornaments with point values, and they would throw it, and whatever was the closest ornament they got, that was their point value. So you can use it different ways. Now, this one is not, it's one of the more popular ones that I see mentioned in the tutor groups and on, in the Facebook group, but I didn't really love it. And that's Wiggle Worm. So I made it last year. This is painter's tape around a little jar from Dollar Tree, and I put my little sticks in there, and you just draw out a stick. And okay, if you draw out geography, then you review geography. And if you draw out a wiggle worm, I have 2 wiggle worms in here. They're my little worms. Then everybody just wiggles. I mean, the kids think it's fun, but for 30 minutes, it just feels boring to keep doing that over and over again. So this one is one that I have ditched for this year. It's not on my list. but I will keep it close at hand. So if I need to punt on one quickly, or if we, just need something different, I have it because I prepped it last year, but it's not my favorite, but a lot of people love it. Now this is hands down my kid's favorite game. And unfortunately it was posted in the tutor group last year and I haven't seen it reposted this year. So I don't have a link for you. I'm hoping the person who made it will repost it this year because this is my kid's favorite. It's called Hot Stew. And at first I was like, I don't even understand how this game is going to work. It's not really a game. And maybe that's why they like it so much, but it's all these cards. They say Hot Stew, really cute. And on the back of them are ingredients: beans, pork, bread, whatever. And so I have these 2 stew pots. This is when I would do, and for this one, there's no like competition, so I'd still do it this way. I'll have 2 teams and I give them each a pot and we ask a question, and then I ask one of the kids from the first team. I'll just give them, like, we'll draw out 2 cards and I'll say, okay, do you want maple syrup or sprinkles? And they pick whichever ingredient and they put that on their team's pot. And then I go to the other team, ask a question, we answer it, and then first person on that team, do you want avocados or garlic? And they pick. They think it is hilarious. Some groups will want to try to make like a disgusting soup, and some groups will work really hard to make a really good soup, but they love it. They just laugh and laugh and laugh. They think it's so funny. That is hands down their favorite from last year. So I will absolutely be reusing that one this year. All right, this is a fun one for around Halloween time, and that is roll a pumpkin. And you use dice, and each kid needs like a little piece, one of these pieces of paper. And if they roll like a 1, then they make your pumpkin a square. If they roll a 2, they make it an oval. And then for, the second roll, that determines what their eyes are gonna look like. And so you're drawing pumpkins on pieces of paper. You could do this up on the whiteboard. I had mine do it on pieces of paper, and that was just kind of a fun seasonal one. There's some that are more generic, like roll a monster, roll a whatever, and you can draw different things like that. So those are some of my main games. I also keep a couple of just like in my back pocket in case I leave something at home. You could do tic-tac-toe on the whiteboard. Alien face is kind of similar to the roll and draw, where they get to add ears and eyeballs and hair and stuff to a face on the whiteboard. I have 4 corners cards that I keep in my tutor bag all the time. Beanbag toss is a really easy one. So I try to just keep a couple of like no prep or low prep ones on hand that if I need to pivot real quick, I can. But these that I've prepped and that I used last year, they went pretty well. Also, if you have kids that have a hard time sitting, the youngest group or just older ones are really active, and by the time you get to games, they have a hard time focusing. Some tutors really like to do like Play-Doh or brain flakes or Legos or even coloring while they listen. My kids last year did great. They were not worn out by the end. They were able to play the games and it was fine. Other than that, like I said, sometimes the competition was kind of hard for them. But in general, we didn't end up doing that. But I know for a lot of groups, it just depends on your dynamics of your kids, the ages and their personalities. Sometimes it's better to have like a quiet, chill thing. And so you don't need all these games that I've done, but instead you need like some where they're all separate from each other and doing something with their hands. So kind of have to feel it out with your kids and see, but it is good to have in the back of your mind, okay, we can try Play-Doh, we can try building, we can try coloring, that kind of thing. Real quick to wrap us up here, just a couple of things. First of all, my binder, I have a binder that I keep my stuff in, and it has, I'll just try to show you real quick here. I've got my planner right here. This is printed from CC Connected. Our director prints this off for us, but the file is on CC Connected, so you can print it off too. And this is not where this is where, well, I'll show you. I do like a generic planning on sticky notes the week before that just says like one word, agility ladder or cards in order. And then when I sit down to actually do my planning, I will type out on my computer like the actual hand motions, like more detail. But this is just like my overview. And then when the week is over, I go back and I take these sticky notes off and then I write in there. Again, just a real quick thing to remind myself of what we did. But these are not my detailed plans. I like to type those up, and so I do those separately. But that's what I have. I have these tabs, and I have that under the first tab. Then I have 6 tabs where there's a tab for each week. And so all of my week 1 materials will be behind the first tab, and all my week 2. And so I do 6 at a time. So I'll have like art examples, my sample art project, scripts, the science scripts, My more detailed tutor notes, all that is behind one, and then I have one for week 2, and then so on. And after week 6, I take those out, and then I use it for weeks 7 through 12. Something else, so last year I had the flashcards that you can buy in the bookstore, the CC bookstore, and that's what I would use for review each week. And I would switch them out each week, and then during review time, I would draw out of that little container. This year, I did not purchase those, and instead, I'm using this file that somebody shared on CC Connected that it's like, I don't know what to call it. I call it a rolling review week because it changes each week to match what you're reviewing that week. So for the first 7 weeks, you're just kind of you doing whatever you've already done, right? Like weeks 1 through whatever current week you're at. But then for week 8, you switch to like weeks 2 through 8, and then week 9 you do like 3 through 9. And so the person that made these does it so you just have in front of you what weeks you're reviewing for that review time. And so that's nice. You don't have to do a lot of brain work. So instead of buying the flashcards, I have this, and I will just take a pen and mark on them as we cover them, and that'll try to, kind of the same idea as the flashcards, help me make sure we've covered as many of them as we can possibly get in there. So that's something new that I've added to my binder that I did not have last year. Other really quick things. I like to have a first day of foundations and last day of foundations sign. I have each kid hold it and I take a picture of them. And then at the end of the year, I'm able to send their parents a first and a last day picture. I also use it in a little portfolio that I put together for them of their art. And then I also have my whole class stand there and do a first day and a last day picture just to see how the kids have changed, to put in the yearbook, whatever. This is on my Etsy shop if you want this little file that I made, and it's got all the ages up through all the challenge ages. Something else that I do is I keep a note on my phone that has a checklist of what I need to do each week for my tutor prep. And so each week when I get home, I go ahead and switch out things like the history visual cards, the timeline cards, my memory work pages. I do that as soon as I get home. Like I just try to just come in the door and put my stuff down and go ahead and do all my switching. And then I just check them off if that's done. And then later in the week, as I watch my science videos, as I, during Tin Whistle and Orchestra, as I listen to those videos, as I draft the email to the parents that I'm going to send the next week, I just keep a little checklist on my phone and in the notes. And that way I always know each week what it is I need to do. And it kind of keeps me on track because it can get scattered. Okay, I think that's it. I think that's all the prep that I've done over the summer to get me ready for this upcoming school year. So I hope that helps you. Like I said, I feel like 1,000 times in this video, so I'm a broken record. If you're looking for links for stuff, check those 2 blog posts, the tutor prep blog post and the Cycle 2 specific blog post. If you're looking for ideas for the grammar and the fine arts, like actually planning ideas, check that Cycle 2 tutor plans post where I have some stuff done, and then I will continue to add things throughout the year. So bookmark that and come back to that for ideas. But I hope this helps as you're getting ready for your school year, and I hope you have a fantastic year with your kids. Bye.